True story. A ship, the USS Wasp, arrives at the port of Izmir in Turkey, and there are great protests by the Turkish people. The Wasp. Girls, what are you thinking? Michael Shellenberger and John Papola, Dad Saves America. Such fun. If you're pro-civilization, says Michael, you are pro-law and order, meritocracy, cheap energy, equal justice under the law, free speech, free enterprise. There might be a few other things, but that for me, a Gen Xer, you could actually get a majority of the people in the Western world, even in places like California, to agree on. End quote, says Schellenberger. Oh, well, these are the values of the affluent. Schellenberger imagines he has merited, has access to cheap, non-toxic energy. He has equaler justice than most people, and free enterprise is supplying all this. Meritocracy is always tough to judge, so I'll not. But when it is self-conferred and expressed in income inequality, I laugh, ha-ha, in its manicured face. What I missed in the list? Oh, healthcare, a guarantee of good unadulterated food, education, a forum to exercise my free speech without censure, and most definitely the freedom to point out that the list is yours, not mine, as you prioritize them. They are the list of the priorities of the individualist who is a hopeless conformist. He wants to complain. The narrow motives of the thin man, and it doesn't account for the deep unhappiness of his fellow Americans who are ill-served by their chosen system, but unhappy enough to defend it to the last Ukrainian. And on these two narcissists chunter, stroking each other, condemning woke, what a surprise, and deploring the religious fundies patronizingly, alternately. Immediately, the West Bank settler says on my television this morning, "This is my land. God gave it to me." We are really something so ridiculous, even his ancestors needed convincing by his God in Deuteronomy. Interminable. And here we have the cul-de-sac of arrogances that is the Judeo-Christian heritage, a civilization that is incapable of freedom. And if your God gave you this land, the sick puppy of Deuteronomy, genocide is a value of your civilization. If you don't know that, then don't go to college. Not mine. Just admit it. Dress it up like Western civilization has always done. It is all there in the books they have written. But I didn't show up today to talk about this. Today is my brief study of woke and its relentlessly unoriginal haters, by and large white people, by and large are men, but with compassion. They are caught up, I grant it, in what Schellenberger has called civilization, that gruesome thing, he and his other dad, which is society that values what they have told themselves they do. If they really did value these generalized propositions and had attained any of them, and if their degrees are worth a dime, they'd acknowledge that they are racially and by gender hugely privileged in them. It appears to me they are distressed by minorities pointing out this discrepancy in their wokeness. Why? Because they want to whine too. Being white, male, educated, and affluent has apparently robbed them of their right to whine, and they hold that value dearly. To call the doctors who do transsexual surgery predators means what? How dare you? What gives you that qualification? Have you asked why highly educated, moral, and professional people have become suddenly predators? I don't happen to agree with it, but I don't make that assumption. It doesn't occur to you, does it? This is one of the great privileges of privilege. Being miserable is the only equalizer. A friend said last night she was a little tired of woke too. The example she gave was people insisting they be called not he or she and getting quite adamant about it. I said, did you see this in real life? My thought on these things has been when I come across it in real life, when wokeness impacts my life, I will point it out to myself and say, yes, anti-wokesters have a point. It hasn't happened yet. And no, my friend had watched them on YouTube. I've always wondered why people get upset addressing others the way they ask and choose to be addressed. As a man with an unfamiliar first name, I get pretty sick of people saying, "Can I call you Dick?" Maybe that's on YouTube too. Much more than woke as a new phenomenon, I have noticed more and more recently the very, very oldest one. People love to complain and demonize. I'm sure Mr. Schellenberger left this off his list of what makes civilization, the freedom to whine, scapegoat, and demonize, which are clearly his most deeply felt rights. I said with compassion, here it is. I do feel very sorry for anyone living in what they think an ideal civilization, whose definitions of freedom they defend so emotionally, who is so miserable and feels so threatened and put out by those who do not share their middle-class affluent values. Cheap source of energy is perfect. There isn't one, idiot. Harnessing the sun and wind to drive your unnecessary car, your status symbol, is not cheap. Your freedom has probably influenced future generations of even the affluent to very altered lives. The unaffluent, or better, those who cannot claim an unfair share of the world's resources as their right, are already suffering. The values of your civilization that leaves you, if not miserable and full of undue grievance and fear, are elitist. Freedom is constrained by the freedom of others. You can't just continually colonize them and force them to be less free than thee to feed you, which is what you have done. That is your perspective. That is your argument. And it's void.